Okay, so today on the Black Country History Hunter, I'm down near Holbeche House, which obviously anybody who lives in the area knows it's famous for the fact that the gunpowder plot conspirators was the last stand. They came here for the last stand. That was never the plan. Obviously the plan was to blow up Parliament and all the people in it, which would have been King James I, his Queen, all his entourage, and all the kind of priests and everything to do with the English Church would have gone. This would have given the Catholics at the time that were being beaten down an opportunity to uprise. The plan was this: they would blow up the Parliament, there would be 14 men waiting in a hunting party with another 200 that would literally go around all the villages and Catholic villages in the Midlands and stir up an uprising, a rebellion. The hunting party went up to the Warwickshire area where it waited. 2 men waiting in the Duck and Drake, while Fawkes was in the cellar. Fawkes was meant to light the match and then spurred away as fast as he could with the good news to the 2 men at the Duck and Drake, and then on to the hunting party to start the rebellion. But unfortunately, the first the men knew of it at the Duck and Drake was the outburst of fires and the outbreak of jubilation in London. The whole city was lit with bonfires because they realised they had delivered the King James I, from the evil Catholics, and the plot had been discovered. I often think that the plot was actually manufactured by the evil spy master, Cecil. Cecil was a man who was an expert spin doctor, a very intelligent man, and I think he discovered the plot when it was in its early stages, when they were trying to dig from a house. I think it was Percy's house, one of the conspirators' houses. But this plan, I think, was discovered. Once the spy master discovered it, he manufactured the story onwards, because it's kind of a dream, the idea that they caught these guys, a Catholic man renting a building under the Houses of Parliament, which is about to have the king in it, a few weeks before the king's meant to be there, you know, and no questions were asked. I think Cecil knew, I think Cecil allowed it, and I think it was dramatised purposefully to get King James I out of the trouble he was in, which was, he was a favouriter, he liked his favourites. I mean, the Catholic situation at the time, they were called recusants, and this was an old Latin word for refusal, so, or recusi, refuse. So they refused to follow the laws. Catholics, most Catholics in the country, because there was a lot of Catholics, they followed the new rules, which is, it's a Protestant country, the king is Protestant, they have a lot of trouble with the Pope and things, so you can live in this country, but they were like proxy Catholics. They would live under the Catholic rule. They were Catholics, but they didn't practice as Catholics. They would practice in the house, maybe doing the mass there, but they were meant to go to church on a Sunday, a Protestant church, regardless if they were Catholic or not. And a lot did this. And if you didn't do this, you were called recusant, and this was when you didn't go to church and you refused to follow the rules of the country. And you were fined heavily, and Littleton, the man who owned the Holbeche House, was one of them. And Catesby was the main conspirator in my eyes. Fawkes was a Spanish soldier, he was a Catholic soldier, and he was basically the guy that just basically knew about gunpowder, knew about tunnelling, he knew about things like that. So he was the do man of the system. But the real brains, the real martyr in my mind is Catesby, because he was the one who put it all together. And Littleton and Catesby were quite close. As soon as they realised the plot was up, they basically, the 2 men in the Duck and Drake, rushed as fast as they could on their horseback to try and get to the hunting party. With them they had 1 barrel of gunpowder, which was going to be used to help them get rid of the bad guys. But obviously en route it got absolutely drenched. It was a horrible November night, it was dark and cold. I mean, you can almost imagine the London lighting up on the 5th with bonfires of celebration. You know, this was a jubilant time for the Protestants. They defeated the Spanish before, in a way. The Catholic Spain was the kind of thing they were trying to fight against with the Catholic laws, because Spain was at war with Spain at the time. Spain had actually sent priests over to preach secretly, called the Jesuits, and these were one of the people that the Elizabeth I and James I were staunchly against. These were hunted down. This is why you get priest holes. And we know that Holbeche itself was actually a firm Catholic stronghold. There are hidey holes and priest holes in that house. So yeah, they rode as fast and as hard as they could to the hunting party. And on way to the hunting party, one of the men actually caught up with Catesby, who was on his way to the hunting party himself after leaving them on the 4th. So he rode so hard, he caught up with Catesby, and nobody actually knows what was said to Catesby. But it was along the lines of, the game's up, you know, the game's up, guy's in custody, it's only a matter of time before he breaks under pressure. So they all rode The plan was, at first, to escape to Ireland, but eventually Catesby decided to go out like a martyr. You know, he tried, he kind of failed. He was going to go around the Midland towns, say the king was dead, even though he wasn't, and try and cause an uprising still. But the people of the town shunned him, the Catholics even shunned him. They saw him as a pariah, you know, a guy who was trying to cause an uprising. He was just trouble in their mind. So yeah, he got no men at all. The men fell by, and the main conspirators ended up at Holbeche House, where he then decided he was going to do a last pitch battle and go out in glory. I think he himself then decided this was going to be, you know, his martyrdom. So I think that the famous words were at the end were, "Come Tom, we shall die together," as he burst out into the courtyard on this house right here. And he was shot supposedly by one bullet, one musket ball. The accuracy on musket balls, I doubt it very much. I think this is again a way of the king putting spin on it, or should I say Cecil putting spin on it as this is divine. You know, God has pointed this musket ball towards this man's chest, it's done the one in and it's done the other. God's on our side. So yeah, I think that's spin as well. But either way, they were shot down. Yeah, Tom died straight away, Percy, and Catesby, he lay there dying, and he crawled apparently to a chapel right next door to the house. Because the guys, they were surrounded, there would have been, we're right next to the house now, there would have been soldiers here. There were 200 men that surrounded him from the sheriff's men. There would have been soldiers here watching and shooting. And yeah, so he crawled into a chapel nearby, and he clutched the Virgin Mary's image, and that's where he died. They immediately cut his head off and had it sent back to London. It was put on the House of Commons as a warning and as part of the celebrations. So yeah, slowly but surely the other conspirators were pulled together. Some were caught not far away from here at Hagley Hall. Littleton got away for a little while, but eventually they were all caught. Some lasted a few months, some lasted less. They ended up in the Tower of London, and they all met a traitor's death. Now a traitor's death is appalling, it's horrible. They would literally drag you through the streets on a piece of wood or board on your back, prostrate, because you weren't allowed to put your fumes in the air of the noses of the people standing around. Basically, you were going to be contaminating the air, so they had you lie prostrate on the floor and you were dragged through the streets. When you reached the scaffold, you were hung until you weren't dead, pulled down, your testicles were removed, your heart would have been removed, and your guts would have been removed. And this was symbolic that in the next life you couldn't procreate, you couldn't pass on this traitor's gene. Then your heads were taken off, the body was cut into quarters, and it was displayed on the Tower of London and in various parts of the town in a celebration. It would sit there until it rotted and fell away. It's as simple as that. It was a horrible way to die, but it stood as a very strong, don't do these things. Do not cross the English king. And since that day, they've basically celebrated Bonfire Night, which is Bez's birthday, by the way, one of the guys that helps me out. They've celebrated that day as a day of jubilation, a day where the king was delivered once again. He was delivered from, Elizabeth was delivered from the Catholics during the Spain Armada when they came and the Protestant wind blew them away. King Henry VIII, when he dissoluted the monasteries, he saw himself as divine. So, you know, there's been various times throughout history where we celebrated things, successes, and this was one of them, which is why I think it was stage managed a lot, you know, because the king was losing, as I said, a lot of favour at the time. He was gay, which is no problem obviously, but then it was a big problem, and he had favourites, you know. These men were being lavishly given gifts and honours and things that the real courtiers, the real men of power and industry in the area were like, well, what's he ever done, you know? So you can kind of understand the resentment, but yeah, so he was hated for that. There was a few attempts on his life, but he survived and we celebrated, and the news spread. As the news spread around the kingdom, as it would have done over the preceding days, fires and bells rang out. It was a jubilation. People were celebrating the fact that they'd been delivered from the Catholic swine, as they saw them. They went on to be called devils because of what had happened. It was a real PR stunt for the Protestants. And if we look where we are now, we've got that beautiful oak tree I've just been sitting on. We've got the osier beds behind us, which I'll show you a picture of now. You can see there in the 1880s map, osier beds. These were basically willow beds that were used to grow willow, and the willow was used for basketry. So I'm sure at some point in the history, the first knowing of them was in like 1469, the first thing I've seen of osier beds. But it's a type of willow. There's over 400 species of willow. The weeping willow is one you might know, you know, that you used to swing on as a kid. They grow in marshy areas. So there's a stream here. and that stream would have been dammed slightly to flood the area, and that would have been used to grow the willow, and that would have gone on to be, so that wood there was very industrious wood at one point. And yeah, so, and then the house is still here today. It's a care home today, and the Holbeche House is just over there, behind the trees. You can't really see it for the minute, but if we have a walk down, we might actually see it. Yeah. I don't know if you can see it. You can see a picture of it here, and again here. But here we are in real life today. There was a crossing here at some point throughout history into this field. This would have been originally the land of Holbeche House, but now it belongs to Mr. Potter, who's kindly allowed me to come on here today and have a little mooch around. So thank you, Mr. Potter. I am going to go around to the front of the house later and see if we can speak to the nursing home staff and maybe get some pictures that way. But I'm not hopeful because I know they're very reluctant. Obviously it's a care home and a place of quiet. I don't want to disturb anybody. Just have a look back at that tree there. Wow. So this tree would have been here during the gunpowder plot. Beautiful oak tree. Over 700 species lived on the tree like that. It's been there for 400, 500, 600 years maybe. It's absolutely massive. And it's all gnarly, and if it could talk, I would talk to it for days. Right, I don't think we can get across anymore, guys, but yeah, we're going to do a bit of detecting, see if we can find any history for you, some connections, obviously anything important will be passed on to the local museums. But yeah, brilliant guys, thanks. Okay, got the first signal. Wow, wow. Straight away we're on to history. Straight away, this is definitely before the house. This is, I think, half of a crotal bell. So yeah, I'd say that's definitely a medieval crotal bell. Absolutely amazing, brilliant. Let's hope we can find something relating to the Civil War era. You know, 1600s, 1650s, because that would tie in nicely with the gunpowder plot. So yeah, brilliant guys, thanks. Okay, we've got a signal here, we'll do a live dig. No idea what this is. Could be an old can. Do you want to come right in, Steve? Right in. Okay, what did I say? Could be an old can. So obviously we get a lot of this kind of rubbish. On to the next. Okay, we've got a decent signal. Obviously all this grass will go back. Whenever you're cutting, a little advice, I know somebody mentioned the other day on one of the videos they'd like to hear more about metal detecting and machines. Well, this is my dais. I started off with a Garretace 250, I had that for like 7 years and that was like my dream machine. I adored it. I always knew a machine like this cost a lot more. I mean, a light setup, which is just the coil, which is wireless, and this, which is normally goes on the headphones, but I've adapted it to go onto a headphone, and an adapter to make it fit on there, which normally a box would go, and the box is £400, but this acts as the box, and this, so this is for £350, and this is about 300, so 600, but I paid 450 for this, all in all, second hand, but I got it by finding a machine. I found a gold coin with my old Garretace 250. So somebody said, what's a good machine? The Garretace 250, it's a switch on and go machine. It's quite cheap. I mean, I paid for my first one. I went to Regton Metal Detectors. And then you've got your insurance, which is like a tenner a year. So which is fine, it's a cheap hobby really. And then it's just permissions. I'm lucky, I've got an uncle that owns a farm in Bridge North and he's got 2,000 acres out there. I've got Mr. Potter in this area. I've got the Roman Road. We're gonna do a video there soon. Obviously not on scheduled monument, but on the fields to the side. So yeah, we got some really good digs coming up, and good advice, buy a cheap machine. Don't go mad and buy a good machine, because it took me a long time to get used to this and the sounds and the noises. Whereas the Garrett, it's a switch on, you turn it on, you go, dig everything. I read that many books about what to dig and what not to dig. Dig everything, even the rubbish, and you'll start getting your ear in, and soon enough you'll be leaving cans because you know what they are. Or pick them up and put them in a litter, that's what I tend to do. So yeah, when you dig a trench like this, make the hole as small as possible. Obviously if the grass is a bit shitty like this, it ain't so bad, but you don't leave holes because you're going to cripple animals and you're going to cripple human beings if they're crossing this way. You pull out a square like that, and you make sure you leave one side to make a flap. So cut, pull it out, leave a flap on. If you cut it totally off, that grass will die. I don't know how it works, I don't know why it happens, it will die. If you leave it like this, in a week's time, even tomorrow, you come back, you will not find this hole. Okay, straight away I've got that. You're seeing this with me, so it looks really interesting actually. A scutcheon? A scutcheon is a decorative piece of steel that sits around a key. So if that's an escutcheon, I'd say this could easily be contemporary with the house. This is exciting. I mean, I will mention it to the local museum. This could easily be contemporary with it. Beautiful. Absolutely amazing. So that could be 1400s through to 1700s. So it could be off a soldier's belt. It could be from the bottom of a pommel of a sword handle. I'm sure somebody on the site will know, so I will put that on later. But and I will speak to Flo, the finds liaison officer. That's another thing. If you're finding interesting things on big sites such as a Roman site, you have to log it with the finds liaison officer, and they do something called spatial data. So they're not necessarily going to take it off you, but they will take it from you for a few months. They'll report it, they'll record it, they'll date it, they'll put it onto a site, a portable antique scheme site, PASS, which everybody can look at, and then they've got the spatial data. So if they know that 17 Roman coins have come up in this field, that spatial data, even if they've come up at different times throughout 20 years, that tells them there's something Roman going on here. A coin spill, a fort, a base, a camp, something. That spatial data is important even if they're not actually taking it from museums. A lot of the finds come back to you. I've got boxes of stuff that have come back to me from the Flow. I mean, the last time I documented with the Flow, it was Sheila Burford, lovely lady. But yeah, she took my bodkin and she gave it back. That went to Treasure Tribunal, which tells you how much it's going to be worth and what museum wants it. But there was no interest, so I got it back. So yeah, definitely 100% older than the house or contemporary with the house. Absolutely beautiful. On to the next one. Hey. Oh. Come here. I don't even have to dig for that. Well, I did have to dig for it, but without getting it out, you can see what that is.
It's a musket ball, eh, mate?
It's a musket ball, so...
Oh my gosh.
These are really hard to date. Obviously the lead and the round balls and the muskets were used from the invention of gunpowder right the way through to 1880s, 1870s. Some of the old lads on the barges and boats were still using gunpowder into the 19th century, 20th century. But yeah, this is so small. The later it went on, the smaller they got, but with pistols, it's hard to tell because pistol balls didn't actually change much. Whereas the rifle balls, it was 50 mil, you know, they were massive in the Civil War era. So today, to be honest, I was expecting to find anything. I was expecting to find big musket balls. But there's every chance that they were using pistols. So this could easily be a pistol, but I'm trying to make the facts fit the day really, so I can't. It's a pistol ball, it could be any era. So it could be 1780s, it could be somebody hunting rabbits illegally, it could be the farmer at the farm down the road just doing his normal pheasant shoot, it could be the owner of Holbeche at the time having a jolly and shooting into a dog trying to get his lambs, you know. It could be anything. It could have just been dropped, but yeah, I'd say it's been fired because it's rounded off from where the sprue is. They used to make them with these special sets of pliers. I'll put a set up on the screen now. So yeah, they'd mould them themselves. That's why often when we're metal detecting we find bits of lead everywhere, because soldiers, especially later on when the volunteers were formed, they'd have to make their own bullets, so they'd walk around areas nicking lead off roofs, off windows. You know, they were always nicking lead, putting it in the pockets, and obviously because it's heavy, it would wear through the pockets, being terrible material, and fall through onto the legs and onto the floor. Brilliant. So yeah, we'll move on, and little pistol musket ball. Right, another tip, top tip for anybody who's starting out is go around trees, anywhere. Beza just said this to me, you know, anywhere where people are going to sit, especially old trees. I mean, this here, this would be shelter. It looks like it's going to rain today. The clouds are looking quite ominous. But throughout the years, even in the sun, they would shade under here. They would hide from the rain under here. People would generally come and sit here. They'd come as couples, you know, when it was popular in the 1800s to walk out with your woman. So yeah, before the internet and POF, this is where you come for your dates, you know. But so yeah, you always look around the trees. One of the problems is metal detectorists have got this bad habit of throwing stuff up. I don't do this. I'll put the trash in my pocket and I'll get rid of it at the suitable place. But a lot of bad hobbyists, they throw the rubbish by trees. It's a magnet for some reason. They'll just throw it by a tree. So you end up finding other people's finds, bits of old crap, bits of tin, bits of metal, bits of foil, all sorts of rubbish. Anything from picnics. So yeah, I'm saying this to you now because I've done here where you've got, I think it's a rabbit hole, a rabbit warren, and I've got a signal in the sand. Obviously I'm not going to disturb the hole at all, I'm not going to dig inside the hole, but in this little bit of dirt there, or sand, we've got a signal. So let's have a look what we've got. Do you want to come in, Bert? Bert? Easy digging. I can hear that without putting it on my ears. It's blowing it's something big because it's blowing it off. It's blowing my head off. Ah, there we go. Okay. So, oh, that looks interesting. The style and the way it looks quite early. Again, it could easily be Civil War, but it's hard to tell. But you can tell it's pre-1800s just from the way it's been crudely engineered. So let's get it's hollow. Okay, so it's hollow. It's got a hole there. It could be some sort of, maybe wood went in there and it was for a powder measure. But because there's a hole in both sides, that kind of puts that out. But I'm sure it'd be some sort of device for loading guns maybe, or I couldn't tell you. Popeye? I don't know. I'm sure somebody can tell us what it is, and I will put a picture up if I know what it is now, telling you what it is. But otherwise, it's a mystery item. But the dating on it, I'd say 1800s. So we're in the right time frame. We'll have another look round the tree. Yeah, it is. Coins. So some of these drops are by this tree. A little. Oh my God! Look, it's still wet in the middle. So that ain't dried. It's probably from rain. But they ain't old. Georgian pennies. We got. It's a coin spill. Whenever you get more than 4 coins, but there's 4 bang on here, so it's not a hoard. Anything more than 4 is a hoard, under 4 is a spill. Anything prior to 1820, the flow ain't interested. I mean, I had a gold one once, which is what I sold to buy this machine, but because it's 1824, it's not particularly old. They're not interested. I mean, it's sad really, but industrial archaeology is not being recorded. It's being recorded in the spatial data, but it's not being treated as other history is. They want pre-1700s. If it's not pre-1700s gold or silver, the interest ain't as high. But yeah, we got 4, 1918. You find the oldest one or the most modern one, and that's the date. Everything before these coins, they had Victorian coins circulating in 1918. You know, because the penny never changed until decimalisation in the 72. 1914. That one's badly worn, but they're all George. Yeah, they're all George the 5th. George the 5th. So he reigned after Queen Victoria died. So yeah, and they come in a little clip as well. Brilliant. How about that? Cheers, Bez. Okay, Bez has just been having a little dig and that come out. I've knocked a bit off it. Now, I know everybody's going to say, oh, it's a ball bearing, but 1, it's not steel. 2, it's irregular in shape. 3, it's small. Or too big, depending on ball bearings can be massive or small. They can be all sizes, but that to me says canister shot. So if that is canister shot, then I don't know if they brought any kind of artillery with them, but if there's 200 men of the sheriff's men, they would have had artillery pieces. This is just before the Civil War, you know. The men were armed. They were armed bands. So that is amazing. A canister shot would be like a car spring off an old car, and in that spring there'd be lots of ball bearings or shot running round, and they'd put the whole thing into a cannon, and when it fired, it'd explode out like a shotgun. It's like a big shotgun. So that there, unless it was a small artillery piece and the bore was as big as that, because you could get small cannon as well. But the fact that it's in this field and the house is just to the right of us, you can just see it through the trees there. So yeah, the house is about 200 metres away, if that. And that canister shot's there. If they surrounded the place and they were at a distance and they were firing, there is actually, as you see on the map here, there's a high point just over there. You can see on the map here that this high point would have been a perfect vantage point to have some sort of artillery. So if they were, because it was quite a big thing. I mean, this is the King of England that's been tried to be killed. You know, if you're going to go in there, you're going to go in there with force. You're going to show that you don't do that in England. So they're going to go in there with all the heavy, you know. I know they got there quickly, but this is another reason why I think they knew about the plot beforehand and it was stage managed. They went in there quickly. They was there the next day, you know, with 200 men. And brilliant. So there we go. That could be canister shot, or it could be a small cannonball. I will check out the bores when I get home, but if you've got any ideas, it's open to interpretation, but it's nice to think. Yeah, they just pulled this grub up, look. You'll have to excuse me, I'm sweating now. Can anybody tell me what that is? I bet it bites. Crazy. I don't think it's dead, it's just dormant. But yeah, we've got a signal. It's a little bit irony, but we'll dig it anyway because we're running out of signals now. There's only so much that'll be in this field. We ain't done all of it. Still here. Still there. So it's big and deep by the looks of it. Going more up to mine. Bricks. Still in. Okay, so as you know, I've been digging a little while there, and finally that come up very deep. And at first glance, that I know I keep saying everything's Roman, but that looks Roman. That's really early. So this could be quite an interesting site, you know. But we're going to head off now, round towards the front of the house, and maybe do a little bit there about the drama that played out during the day, because it's best to get the sense of it in it. We'll ask the staff obviously what's going on, if we're allowed to film for 10 minutes or not. But brilliant, we had a really good day. Thanks to Bert and thanks to Beza for helping out. And the next one might be Green's Forge, Roman camp. But if anybody's got any ideas for the next video, let me know, because I'm here, ultimately I'm here for you, you know. It ain't about me. I don't want to be famous on YouTube. I don't want to do none of that stuff. I'm doing it just to pay a little bit back to the community that brought me up, you know, and just give a little bit back, really, of history that I love. So yeah, I don't intend to ever try and make money off it. I don't really care. I'm happy just being as I am, plodding on. If I've got food in the cupboards, I'm an happy chap. So yeah, and if I've got something to find like this, I'm an happy chap. So yeah, let's carry on. We'll have a look around the front, and look forward to the next video. Thanks. Looking up towards where the Holbeche was, and you can see that this gorge has been cut out the road, the Wolverhampton road, and no doubt from what, 400 years ago. The men of the sheriff were riding down here towards Holbeche, as same as the conspirators were riding down here towards Holbeche, and they would have passed this way. Well, from London they would have passed along this way, but back towards Cayford, passed across, and the sheriff's men would have surrounded all this area to stop any kind of, there would have been roadblocks up there towards Himley and roadblocks down there, stopping anybody escaping. Yeah, this was a big thing, you know, and it's amazing, it's in our midst and in our history, and we kind of know about it, but don't know about it. You'll have to excuse the noise because obviously it's a very busy road now. Back then it would have been a busy road, but in for different ways. There's a mill just here to the left, which has now been turned into a private residence, but you can actually still see the old bridge. You can see there an old bridge, and it's beautifully made. The stones have been clamped together, and there is the stream, which I believe is the Smestow, an important river, the Smestow, an Anglo-Saxon boundary. Obviously boundaries, they'd been used for boundaries for years because of the fact they were immovable in many ways. Over thousands of years they moved, but brilliant, beautiful. Here we are now, welcome to Holbeche House care home. There you've got the mill that is now a house, or they've got a new house there. Well, here we are, absolutely stunning. So you think in 1605, on the 8th of November, the sheriff's men surrounded this house in order to capture the conspirators that wanted to blow up the King of England. They wanted to kill the King of England. And that house is relatively unchanged. It's had some bits added to it, but it is as it was, basically. There's a hidey holes and priest's holes inside there. And in front of the house, the men would have been in the woods, I imagine. If they'd changed much, I wouldn't know. They fired, and Catesby ran outside with Tom, and he said, "Come, Tom, we shall die together." And they did. The lethal blow was struck, he fell, he crawled to a building nearby, a chapel. Where it is, I wouldn't know. But it couldn't be far, because they would have been on him like a shot. You know, the soldiers, as soon as they knew they were dead, they'd have been on him. But that's where it happened, and in that little room, in there, the gunpowder exploded in front of the fire, injuring all the conspirators. You know, one was blinded. But wouldn't have mattered, because a few months later they were being hung, drawn and quartered. Absolutely beautiful, look at that. Stunning. Yeah, thanks guys, been a really good video, really enjoyed this. It's something that is really close to my heart because I'm local. And even though it's in the history books, there's not much being said about it, and I've never seen any archaeological digs there. This is a care home now, so I don't want to get too close. But brilliant, beautiful. Oh, look at that, that's amazing. They've kept that in the style, but I think there was a mill there. But yeah, absolutely amazing. I'd love to live there. I wonder what history is underneath the grass there. Because through the Civil War, I think this was there, obviously the 1650s. What they were using it for, I don't know. But yeah, Stephen Littleton's house, Holbeche. Amazing. Thanks guys, and thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Will hopefully be Green's Forge Roman camp. I'm going to speak to the farmer in the next few days and try and get it sorted. But there is Hobeach, and that is the end for the gunpowder plotters. That is where they martyred themselves, they died. Catesby had his head cut off on that yard, you know. A man had his head cut off there. It was rifle fire and musket fire would have been firing out. 200 men surrounded this building. They were terrorists back then, and they were demonised afterwards. But, you know, it still happens to this day. Terrorism is still prevalent, and it depends what side you're on if you think they're terrorists or not. But there we go. See you on the next one, guys. Thanks. Subscribe, like, tell your friends about it.